let's step from indifference curves, which are the building block of preferences, to actually to utility. Now, everything you need to know about preferences is represented in those indifference maps. Okay? The problem is they're pretty awkward to work with when we need to actually prove theorems and solve and understand how people make decisions. That's a lot easier if we have a mathematical representation of those preference maps. And that's the utility function. So the utility function is a mathematical representation of preferences. That's all it is. You're going to be hearing this term in your nightmares for the next semester, okay? Utility functions. But remember, it's just a mathematical representation of people's underlying preferences. Don't be scared of it, okay? And the key thing is that we assume individuals have these well-defined utility functions. And by maximizing those utility functions, we can tell what choices they're going to make. So for example, suppose that I said that your utility function over pizza and movies was the square root of pizza times movies. That's your utility function. I would say, what the hell does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean anything. It's a utility function. It's your preferences. It's a mathematical representation of your preferences. OK, what does that mean? What it means is it doesn't mean anything inherently, but it tells us about your preferences. What it tells us is that your preferences can be represented, if you flip back to figure 4.1b, okay, it tells us those are your preferences. Because you're indifferent between 2 pizzas and 1 movie, and 1 pizza and 2 movies. Of course you're indifferent. They both give you utility square root 2. But you prefer 2 pizzas and 2 movies because that gives you utility of 2. So this is a mathematical representation consistent with those utility indifference curves. Not the only one. There's other mathematical representations that could be consistent with those indifference curves. But let's posit that this is your utility function. This is the mathematical representation of your tastes. Okay? Now, what does utility mean? Utility means nothing. Okay? In the sense that it is not a cardinal concept. It's only an ordinal concept. So if I say to you that you get 2 utils from 2 pizzas and 2 movies, that doesn't mean anything. It just means that you get more than from 1 pizza and 1 movie. And we can even get the ratio that you get square root of 2 more, okay, than you get from 1 pizza and 2 movies. Okay, we can do ranking and ordinality, but we can't assign cardinality. I can't say how happy you are in some abstract, absolute sense from 2 pizzas and 1 movie. I can't give a cardinal form of preferences. But this is an ordinal ranking of preferences. I can tell what you like better than what else. So that's why utility functions are just representation of indifference maps. They're just a mathematical tool for comparing bundles. They're not some inner answer to the value of your soul or something like that. Okay, so once again, don't imbue these with too much magic. They're just mathematical ways of representing preferences.